Hello, this is Petru. You are watching WellCode, and I'm very excited today because I'm doing the first international collaboration with Andy. Thanks a lot for accepting my invitation. Andy is a self taught programmer, and I'd like to share his experience with you. He did a very good video on YouTube, he has 200,000 views on that. He taught about his experience, about how to learn on your own, how to become a software engineer and get a job. But let's start talking first for the viewers who don't know you already. Can you share more about yourself? What's your current job? If you have any cool personal projects you want to share with the world, or any other cool stuff, even if it's not related to programming.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be talking to you. By the way, it's a really cool experience. So I'm a self-taught software developer, like you mentioned. I live in Chicago, Illinois, in the U.S., and I work remotely for a company in a different state in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they are a human resources company. So they have a platform where companies can basically use the platform to perform, payroll, paying people, absence plans, benefit plans. We handle all of that. So I've been working with them for about a little over a year. You can call me full stack or web developer. I work all the way from the front to the back end with JavaScript, C Sharp, and SQL. As far as pet projects go, no, I don't really have too much right now at the moment. Right now, YouTube has taken up almost all of my time. I did try and start a business last year. It's called Case Centric. It was an immigration law, what would you say, immigration attorney case management system, and that was a lot of work, and it ended up not coming to fruition. But it was a great learning experience. So that's about me.
Yeah, great. So, what were you doing before starting to write code? What made you decide that you want to switch careers?
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. So I was a car salesman working. I've been a car salesman for about a year, and car sales is really pretty brutal. At least it was for me. I was not the best at it. I was really struggling going paycheck to paycheck. If you don't sell cars, you don't eat. And so I was, it's a pretty rough experience. And just by chance, I was having a beer with a friend. We were hanging out on a Friday night, and we were just sitting there having a beer. He was a software developer, still is, and he just mentioned that, hey, I think you'd be good at being a software developer. And I was like, okay, whatever. And he said, no, I really think you would be. And so he said, just go ahead and try reading this book. It was called Head First JavaScript. And we went out and had fun that night. But then I eventually picked up the book, started reading it, fell in love, and the rest is history. It took me about a year from that point, but I taught myself the basics of software development, and luck took me some of the way too. So
So, 1 year while working full time as a car salesman?
yeah, so no, I quit my car sales job after maybe about a month or a month and a half after I initially sort of started studying. I was able to take a month off because I was able to. I had a little money saved up somehow, and it was really perfect timing because in that month that I taught myself JavaScript, I was then able, that month that I had off, I was able to just spend all my time learning or building my first portfolio app, which was a JavaScript Tetris app, and that's when I really cemented in my time and really knew that I could do this full time, and I like, it was not just sort of a little fad that I was getting into.
From my experience, I come from Eastern Europe, where rents are a lot lower than here in the US. How were you able to sustain yourself for 1 year without any other job?
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's an interesting. So after about a month of not working, again, had some money saved up, and I wasn't living in the great part of Chicago where rents were a little bit lower comparatively. But after that month of having off, of having no work, then I got two part-time jobs. One was for an immigration law firm doing just like a clerk job, just doing paperwork, and then I worked at a restaurant like 3 days a week. And between those two, I was able to, just eke out my existence. But let's be clear here. So after about a year had elapsed, and I was looking for, I got my first job, I was in trouble, like financially. Like if I didn't get the job that I did at that time, I would have had to borrow money from people, and that never happened, thankfully. But I was pretty close.
Congratulations for being able to plan all that and make it. There are I believe that there aren't many people who have the courage to just quit their jobs and have that trust that they'll be able to switch careers. Before starting to work, while you were in high school, were you particularly good at math or at the STEM fields? I know that in the US you don't learn programming in school, so I suppose you didn't have any experience with programming.
No, yeah, I there was in school specifically. I always struggled. At least in high school, I struggled immensely. I my focus was on other things, on sports, and honestly, I barely graduated high school. Not because for a lack of intelligence, it really was just my motivations. Once I got to college, after I did a little bit of college after high school, and I was a little more interested because you have to wake up so early. But as far as the STEM fields go, I really had no interest in it. And later now in life, I have tons of interest, even beyond software development. I love reading anything science related. I love it.
And what do you think was the thing which helped you overcome all this? Because it seems like you had a tough background for someone who wanted to learn how to write code and become good at it.
The reason that I feel like I was able to do it, and going from somebody who's selling cars to somebody who's employed in a year, like it's an amazing feat. Like looking back, I'm like, that's really cool that I did that. But at the same time, I saw the opportunity in it, right? So for me, I saw that the pay was going to be better, so it would mean I wouldn't have to be living paycheck to paycheck. The job security is better. I mean, everyone pretty much knows that software developers have a pretty cushy, at least right now. The biggest reason why I sort of had that inner motivation to go through all the tough spots that I did was that it was a career that sort of offered use of my talents, right? So I love working with my mind. I love overthinking problems. Like if there's a problem and there's an inefficiency in some sort of system, I would love to solve it. But at a restaurant, when you're a server, no one cares, right? Like they don't care at all. And so I felt for most of my my working life, like people just overlooked. Like I knew that I could do things with my mind. So with software development, all those things that I just said, on top of the fact that I could actually use my mind to build things and help solve problems, it was like, I got to jump on this and I got to do it. And it took away a lot of sort of the, when you're struggling or you're feeling that self-doubt, I was like, I just got to keep working, keep studying, and good things will happen.
So it was just pure motivation and discipline.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm 32, right? And I've done a few things in my life that required motivation and discipline. And I think the one thing that I've really learned is that motivation. If you're not motivated enough to do something, you won't do it. So if somebody asks me like, "Hey, I want to become a software developer. What should I do?" I'll tell them every step in the book, and I'll pour my heart out and tell you everything I think. But at the end of the day, if you're not motivated enough to sort of get yourself in front of the computer every day and sort of do the things that you should be doing, that's where the meat and potatoes of it is. So it's it's certainly discipline, right? It's certainly doing the right thing, but you have to have that sort of drive to go through with it, and it's well worth it, I'm sure you agree with, right?
Yeah, for myself, I didn't have any other options by doing computer science in high school, so I totally agree. Did you have any previous college education, or you just went straight away and worked as a car salesman?
I had 2 years of college before even like working as a car salesman. But before that time period, it was all sort of general studies. Nothing was related to programming at all. The only sort of thing that like programming experience wise that I had ever really experienced was just growing up working on my parents' computer. I grew up when the internet just sort of started coming into fruition, and I was always sort of problem solving for my family. I was always working with the computer when the internet would go down, or if the printer wouldn't hook up. So that was my like computer coding experience. It should have told me that, like I think it was the thing that, looking back in the past, I was like, oh, I could see how I got into it later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very interesting. Let's switch back to your career, or to when you started deciding to switch careers. What were some things that you think would have helped you if you knew them while you were learning?
That's such a good
So
question. I
basically,
think,
advice for your younger self.
yeah, for sure. I mean, the biggest one is managing yourself from a, let's put it this way, it's basically avoiding burnouts, right? Because if you like coding, for example, and you want to learn it fast, you're sort of, it's a pretty simple equation. Just study as much as you can, right? Like come home, if you have free time, study. And that's great. And if anyone out there wants to do it, I say do it, absolutely do it. But just remember that you are a limited human being and you only have so much energy and focus, and you need to take care of your mental health as much as anything else. And you should, as you're studying, remember to take breaks, remember to take time off, hang out with friends, be normal, but also obviously feel the passion. Spend your time studying, but just find that balance. There's no specific directions you can give to someone. It's sort of an art more than a science, if that makes sense. And then the other thing I would say is, I don't feel like when that first year that I was learning, I didn't meet a ton of developers. I went to a few like meetup.com meetups, but I never really reached out to people on GitHub and asked them for advice, or bought people lunch, or offered to buy people lunch for, in return for sort of guidance. I did have a mentor, actually two mentors, but I felt like I should have done a better job of meeting people, because now that even I've done this YouTube channel, I've met so many people, and the power in that is amazing, because the community is really helpful, and it's something that every developer should look into, even if you're shy.
Yeah, I still remember when I was just beginning. I started before having Facebook. I started reaching out to random people just to ask them questions, and a lot of the people from back then are still my friends, and we're still talking, and we are still helping each other. So I just wanted to put a strong emphasis on that.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think it was your biggest obstacle?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest obstacle I probably had was, I mean, I have ADD, probably like most people these days. Like I have a hard time focusing, and so when I had to sort of start sitting down, and everything I pretty much learned was through books, so anytime that I had to sit down and study for 3 or 4 hours, it was sitting down and reading, and that challenges your your ability to focus. And that was a huge obstacle. The only solution was just sitting down and doing the work. There was no sort of magic pill that I could find. That I just sat down, and if I could do 10 minutes of work without getting stressed out, then cool. If I would just try to get a little bit longer each and every time, and just stick with it. But there was no there's no way around it. You have to sit down and study.
Have you managed to overcome it, or do you still struggle with it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always a constant struggle. For now it's mostly handled, but there are times when it rears its ugly head, right? Where you're assigned a bug and you're like, I really don't want to do this, and your mind's in 8 other places, but you sort of just kind of figure little tricks to work around it. Take a break, come back, have somebody, figure out if you can throw this to somebody else. There's lots of interesting strategies, but it's not a problem anymore, I would say.
Yeah, that's great. I still struggle with that. So
Yeah.
I think I always have set high standards for myself. So if I can focus for 1 hour, then I want 2 hours. If I can do 2 hours, then I want more. And I yeah.
It's all about quality, right? Like, you can study for 2 hours, but if you're watching YouTube in the corner, it's not really the same as doing like 30 minutes of just solid focus work.
Yeah, and any other obstacles, or this was the biggest, and the other just
I mean, time management probably. I mean, working 2 jobs and figuring out how to study. It's just like you just gotta figure out where you're gonna put time in. I mean, I wasn't perfect. Like I don't ever want to sound like I was just like a soldier waking up at 5:30 a.m. and coding every day. It was not quite like that. Sometimes there were maybe there were a couple day stretches where I was really on my stuff. But sometimes I would get 20 minutes of studying in, but I was consistent over the course of time. Over that course of the year, I was very consistent, and it's it's hard. It's hard for me. Like it in retrospect, it's like, oh well, I made it. But when I was in it, when I was learning, and it was like how would you say it? Like I was a mess. Like my life's in disarray. But you just kind of hold it together, and success is not pretty. It's typically very ugly.
So you didn't have like a fixed work schedule when you know every day between which hours you're working.
Yeah, because my part-time jobs were kind of like they would switch hours sometimes. I would just typically look maybe 2 or 3 days in advance and just block out hours and say like I want to study 2 hours here, and sometimes a friend would call me like, hey, do you want to go out? And I'm like, okay. And so I might study for 30 minutes instead of 2 hours. But again, it was consistency over being perfect.
Okay, yeah, got it. I watched your video. So there you said that you just got an interview and you just got hired. So you didn't try interviewing with more companies. Did I understand that correctly?
Absolutely. It's kind of crazy. I got my first interview. I got hired, and I didn't even get interviewed by any company at all. I didn't get even an email back saying, maybe we'll be interested later. But the first company that reached out to me hired me.
Yeah, I didn't get an offer for the first company. I think most of the people get rejected. Have you practiced before for the interview, or you just was so well prepared that it didn't matter?
I'd like to think so, but I think it was, I just think it was luck in this situation. I guess I'll just tell the story. A recruiter found my resume. I guess I posted to a job on a recruiter website,
Okay.
and they saw the resume and said, oh, it's interesting. We have someone who might be interested. And so they talked to the company, and the company was a smaller company. There's like 12 people in the company total. There's like 4 developers. And they said, yeah, sure, we'll see. Maybe we'll hire somebody who has no experience. And so I showed up, and really all I focused on was just being upbeat, positive, kind of like telling them that I'll do whatever, whatever you guys want me to do, I'll do. And I guess that won them over. There was no coding challenge. They sort of just asked me like, what do you know? They're a laid back company, so I don't know what it would be like if I had to interview at some larger company, like say like a Google was offered or let me have a job interview. I don't know how I would have fared. Maybe not so well. Maybe I would have done well. It's just it's impossible to say.
Okay, yeah, so that's great that you could impress them, because a lot of times you can practice for coding interviews, you can search for questions online, but for behavioral interviews, it's much more challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any advice for people who are going through interviews or who are at the point where you were when you started learning?
Yeah, absolutely. One piece of advice that it may not apply to everyone, but it definitely applied to me is that because you're going to be coming to your first interview or first couple interviews, you're going to feel like you don't belong. You're going to feel like you don't have the skills. Like the back of your mind's going to be telling you, oh, you're a fraud, right? And so you might have a temptation to tell them everything that you don't know. Like you're going to say, oh, I don't know how to do database. I don't know how to do SQL. I don't know how to do this, that, and the other. Don't overshare, meaning like you never ever lie. Like you never tell them that you know something you don't. I would never ever recommend doing that. But there's no reason to tell them any more than what you do know, and just be passionate about what you do know. There's way too much to learn in software development, right? Like I don't know everything. I know like a very small subsection of software development, and I don't expect anyone to know that much. But that's probably the one piece of advice I would say is don't be oversharing, oversharing on your bad stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that at any point you can say, oh, I know software development. So while you're learning, you're always seeing what you don't know. And while being in an interview, you're there to prove what you know. And it's up to the people who are hiring you to decide if you know enough or not. They're not there to hear what you don't know.
Right, exactly.
If we're at the advice section, do you have advice for people who think about, oh, should I change careers? Should I stay where I am? What are the things you like about being a programmer? What are things you want to share? And do you want to encourage people to switch, or just let everyone decide?
Yeah, I mean, if it's something that's in your head, if you're thinking like, oh, maybe programming's for me, I'd say that if you enjoy working with your mind, if you enjoy working with ideas, if you like reading books, if you're into science, programming is such a beautiful career because you get to use that passion, that sort of that skill, or if you want to call it, as your day to day work, and it's like, oh my God, like I can't imagine a better scenario for someone. Um, I think what I enjoy the most out of it is that it's working with my mind. I enjoy talking about some of the like tiniest of details, right? So we had a developer meeting last week, and we were discussing how to name our JavaScript files for our that we use a framework, a JavaScript framework called ext, and we spent an hour talking about how we should name files. And at the end, we realized that we had decided a month ago. We had an hour-long conversation a month ago about what the solution was. And this is like, I enjoyed it. Like, I totally enjoyed it because like we're talking about all the downsides of it and the upsides of doing it this way. So it's really cool. And then I would say one of the most fulfilling parts of software development is when you get to create a solution for an end user. So if you work on sort of like an application, like some sort of like cloud application, if you get to build a feature that users are going to use and that helps them, it's like there's no better feeling in the world. It's sort of like a painter, painting a Mona Lisa or something. I don't know. It's just like it's one of the best feelings. I love that. I absolutely love it.
That's one of the best things about being a software developer, that you can help people. What are your plans? Do you want to continue learning? What are your focuses now? And then we'll end up with some very popular questions which got asked by people all the time. But first of all, what are your future plans?
Sure, yeah. So right now I'm living moment to moment. I'm living day by day. I'm really enjoying the work that I do for the company in Pittsburgh. My lifestyle's great. The company is fantastic. The work is great, and I for me, my expectations of what YouTube was going to be before I started have far surpassed. I have way more subscribers than I thought I would have in a year. So that has really taken up most of my time, and I really don't know what it's going to end up. I know that people have responded positively to the things I put out, so I'm going to continue putting things out. I'm starting to mentor a few people who want to go the software development route, and who knows what that will look like. If I could eventually do some sort of teaching, sort of like yourself, that might be cool, but we'll see.
Yeah, I totally recommend it if you're willing to try and help, and especially if you're here. And it seems to me that you're here to help people. You'll love it, maybe more than you love programming.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny is I love programming, and I see some really talented people out there, like people who are far more talented than me. And if you could just be the person who can just help them get where they need to go, it's like there's no better feeling.
Okay, I forgot to ask you something very important. You said that you are a remote developer. How is that? Can you explain more? I never worked remote, so I don't know how it is.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, I work for a company, and it's too far to drive. We have to fly to go over there. So my day typically looks like I actually don't work. So I'm at my house right now, but I don't typically work too much here. I actually I pay a little bit for a office in downtown Chicago, so I can go there. It's a co-working space, and I can work with other people who work remotely. So there's some software developers, there's small businesses, and so that way it gives me sort of that feeling that I'm surrounded by people. There's stuff going on, because working from home, like where I live and breathe and spend all my time, it's not the best thing. I need to get out of the house to do something. But other than that, the actual work of it, it's a little bit different than working at a physical location where you're with your coworkers. Communication is not as fruitful at times, but it's definitely still possible. There are things that I miss about the physical location, but there's so many benefits to working from home that I ride my bike to work every day. Sometimes I stay home. Sometimes if I need to go to a doctor's appointment, I just go. So it's lovely, but it's definitely an acquired taste. It's not for everyone, that's for sure.
Is the program flexible, so you can work whenever you want as long as you do your work, or do you have to be online during certain times?
Yeah, we definitely have to be online from business hours, but if it's so flexible in that if I need to work a little bit earlier and leave a little bit earlier, there's no problems that way. But we're definitely expected to be there during business hours.
Okay, so you're not able to travel the world. Let's say you want to go to Asia and work from there.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, within the U.S., never has been a problem. But yeah, I can't imagine going to Asia or something and working like 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. That would be.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay, and now let's end up with some very popular questions. First of all, what do you think? Which is the best programming language?
Best programming language? Oh man. I mean, I love C#. I probably have gone back and forth on my channel a few times. So people are like, "Didn't you say JavaScript was the best?" But there's no way JavaScript is the best programming language. I like it, but it's not the best. I think C#, but that's just because what I use, and I like it better than Java. I've never done C++, and I am really intrigued. And I think, especially talking to you, that you code in C++. So I think maybe that's what I'll give a whirl next, and maybe I'll have my mind changed, because it seems like there's something like very fundamental to programming or software development that C++ is that almost any other programming language is based off of. JavaScript is wacky and really weird.
C++ can get way weirder.
Oh, really? Okay.
But in different ways.
Sure, I gotcha. But yeah, C#. I'd say C#.
Yeah, another question I get all the time from my subscribers is, what do you think? Should I go into mobile development? Should I do web development? What's the hot topic?
Yeah, I mean, I live in the world of web development, and it just seems like so many that's really in need. Obviously, there's actually a lot of YouTubers I found who do mobile development who become pretty big. I just recommend web development just simply because I'm in it, and that's sort of my world. But that's all I could really say. I don't know too much about any of the other spheres, like machine learning and I guess cryptography is kind of getting big with cryptocurrencies. So yeah.
Yeah, okay, and let's end up with another very popular question. In Romania, college is free, so we may get a bit of a different view, and that's why I'm curious about your opinion. What do you think about college? Should you do college for computer science? Should you do a college if it's free or if it's very cheap? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, if college is free or cheap, it seems like that's the best way to go, because at the end of the day, there are going to be companies that will hire you or at least give you an interview based on the fact that you do have a college degree, right? Now, if college is a little more expensive and you're sort of hesitant to take on student debt, I totally get it. Self-taught route, like 100% self-taught, like no school whatsoever, it's not for the faint of heart, right? So you're going to have to trust that all the hard work you're putting in is going to find you some opportunity where someone will interview you and then hire you, which what would you say? You have to stomach it. You have to be able to stomach it, and you might go 2 years or even maybe 3 years, like who knows, without getting a job. Hopefully, best case scenario is that's not the case, but you certainly need to be prepared for it. But I don't know. I took on a lot of student debt to go to school, and I really wish I had just dropped out. But it's easy to sort of look in hindsight and say that I really can't recommend for someone else what to do. You kind of have to look at your situation and make the best decision.
Thanks a lot. It was very inspiring to talk to you and hear all your opinions. For those of you who are watching, subscribe to Andy's channel. He does very different things from what we're doing, and I totally recommend on checking out his channel. And until next time, don't forget to hit the like button, to also subscribe to our channel, and I wish you all the best, and I hope you'll become better programmers.